When people say like that, just take a few examples, that George Soros and Bill Gates are actually evil. Like, with Bill Gates, I've got my own understanding, the significance of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, their influence over something like the WHO, their investment in vaccines, their acquisition of farmland, their misadventures in India and on the continent of Africa when it comes to agriculture, their promotion of synthetic foods, their odd intrusion into areas of legislature, health policy that doesn't seem right. I have a bit of an understanding when it comes to Bill Gates. Extraordinary that he's another person that's, a tech giant and a tech entrepreneur and a billionaire and a philanthropist. I wonder with George Soros, he was a sort of one of those figures I don't sort of know much about, except like when he's attacked, people say, hey, that's anti-Semitic and it's conspiracy theory. I understand that he's a Jewish man. Pretty recently, I heard that when the Clinton Foundation were over in Haiti, ostensibly helping Haiti in a way that in retrospect looks pretty clumsy. We're here to help you. Please get your help off of us. And like the money was spent in all sorts of weird, clumsy ways. And even when you see video footage of a sort of a younger, sleeker Hillary Clinton leading George Soros peculiarly through the wreckage of Haiti, even though that's before many of their subsequent disasters, you feel like, what's going on? Why is this guy there? What's happening? So can you explain to us these figures that defenders of say there's nothing to worry about when it comes to Bill Gates, he's just a nice dude, or George Soros, there's no problem there. I mean, I've heard, for example, that George Soros benefits in some way from the conflict between Ukraine and Russia with regard to oil. But I don't understand that. And I wonder if you could help me to understand it, please, Mike.
No, this is important to keep in mind because George Soros is not just like a player in this. The annual contributions just to the DNC, the last election cycle, George Soros contributed $100 million to the DNC. The second biggest donor was only $40 million. So George Soros was 2.5 times bigger than anybody else in terms of a donor. So he dominates the political leadership of the Democrat Party in the US. But this is very much a global story. So let's sort of start with the George Soros origin story. In 1979, George Soros was a partner at a hedge fund in New York who primarily concentrated on doing foreign currency speculation, that is, betting using New York financial firm, assets under management on the direction of currencies in Eastern Europe in the middle of the Cold War. He creates the Open Society Foundation, in his own words, as a tax loophole for his children, for Alex Soros, in South Africa in 1979. But then he lucks his way into the windfall of a lifetime when Ronald Reagan becomes president in 1980, and this new doctrine of using NGO statecraft, using the National Endowment for Democracy, as I mentioned, that same thing that Hunter Biden was on the board of and that was created explicitly by the CIA director to have non-CIA fingerprints on funding of CIA assets. In 1982-83, the NED gets set up, and Reagan expands this doctrine of working through NED cutouts and working through the web of civil society organizations and NGOs to do CIA-backed color revolutions, particularly in Central and Eastern Europe, which was the main hot zone of the Cold War. So Hungary, Poland, Germany. Well, the Cold War was global. These exact countries were the biggest hot zones of spy versus spy, of the CIA versus the KGB, and they were the crown jewel of the prize for winning the Cold War. When Hungary toppled its communist government and became part of the sort of NATO Western world, when Poland toppled its government with Lech Walesa and the Solidarity movement there, when Germany reunified, George Soros teamed up in the early 1980s when this collaboration was being set up so that the Open Society Foundations, their offices in all of those different countries, would function as State Department and CIA vassals for the student groups and the revolutionary street muscle that would take to the streets in a show of force or would destabilize or shut down the economy or the governance functions of the ruling communist regime in order to orchestrate those revolutions. George Soros basically took this open society model and set up basically satellites in all the different regions that the CIA and State Department were running government toppling blueprints in. And so his own universities, his own NGOs, his own, sort of civil society organizations were being used in order to help the CIA and State Department overthrow those governments. Well, that's a great gig if you happen to simultaneously be running a hedge fund speculating on the direction of those currencies, because you have an advance 6-month, 12-month, 5-year head start in terms of the direction of that currency, because you know that the CIA is going to overthrow that government and either prop it up or crush it. So you can short it and make a massive, massive windfall, for example, if you know that it's going to be destabilized. And he was tasked by the Reagan State Department to do that destabilization work, and they were getting tens of millions of dollars to help facilitate that, again, through this money network. And so Soros became a darling of this bipartisan blob apparatus. He was best friends with John McCain. You may have seen pictures of them where they're so close to each other, smiling, you think they're about to start making out. John McCain, by the way, was not just, this very powerful senator for 2 decades here in the U.S. He was not just the man, who the blob was deciding between in the 2008 presidential election when the choice was between John McCain and Barack Obama. But John McCain was also the founder and the president for 25 years of the IRI. Now, I mentioned Hunter Biden's NDI, the National Democratic Institute. When the NED was created, when the CIA created the National Endowment for Democracy, it simultaneously created 2 different spindles, 2 branches of the NED, subsidiaries that are wholly funded and controlled by the NED. One was for Democrat stakeholders called the NDI, which Hunter Biden sits on the board of, and Madeleine Albright, the former Secretary of State, runs. It also created the RNC, the Republican branch. You can think of this like the CIA wing of the Democrat Party and the CIA wing of the Republican Party. The Republican branch of the NED is called the IRI, the International Republican Institute. Who founded and ran that for 25 years? It was John McCain.
Do you have trouble sleeping or staying asleep? Perhaps because you're a busy parent or you work incredibly hard. I have to sleep well every night. I can't muck about because I have to look after my family. I have to do my job well. Now, Dream is a luxurious drink blend filled with the highest quality sleep-promoting ingredients. It will help you to fall asleep and stay asleep. This is my favourite one, peanut butter. But there are other flavours as well. Here they are. Now, you can incorporate this easily into your nighttime routine like I have done. It helps me wake up refreshed, not at all groggy like other sleep-promoting agents might. If you get a subscription, it saves you 20% every single month. Not to mention, you get a little free frother look. 1 scoop of Beam Dream is clinically shown to help you fall asleep faster, sleep through the night, and wake up fully refreshed. Visit shopbeam.com/RussellBrand. Use the code BRAND to get my exclusive discount of up to 35% off. And also, they'll know that you use this code. It'll make this advert look like a real triumph.
So John McCain became the essentially the Republican bipartisan branch of the Soros operation. This is why you have sort of a kind of, even though Soros is known as a sort of left-wing figure, he is supported by half of the Republican Party, and he makes selective contributions and bolsters. These are folks like Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney's on the board of the IRI. Mitt Romney, by the way, is who ran for president for the Republican. He was the Republican Party nominee for the 2012 presidential election. And he's also the one who led the impeachment of the populist nationalist sort of representative wing of the Republican Party, Trump, during the impeachment over the Ukraine. Amazing. Remember, they impeached Trump because he threatened to withhold military aid to Ukraine, i.e. the exact financial investments of this same class that I just mentioned. And this also gets the Soros story in Ukraine. Ukraine is in debt to the IMF and the World Bank. George Soros functions as this sort of financial intermediary between what the IMF, the creditors in the IMF and the World Bank need done to get their debts repaid, and the political actions that countries need to take in order to pay off that debt. Often what that involves is privatizing industries that are held by the state, selling them, and then using the proceeds of that sale to pay off the IMF and the World Bank. If you know the IMF and the World Bank are going to force a fire sale of a major trillion-dollar industry in that country, well, then guess what? If you are a corporation or a financial firm and you know this is going to happen, you get a bargain basement discount price to be able to swoop in and take over that industry when it undergoes that privatization. George Soros explicitly laid out in a series of documents you can look up that were called the Blue Leaks, or also called hashtag DC Leaks. These were George Soros IMF coordination documents to coordinate the sale of Naftogaz, the privatization of Naftogaz in an IMF deal. Now, again, Naftogaz is the state gas giant of Ukraine. It is Ukraine's entire economy, okay? Ukraine's entire economy is that it runs the gas transit points from Russia into Europe, which used to be 100% of gas into Europe from World War II, essentially, up until 2022. Technically, they went through a gas diversification program in the early 2000s that the State Department coerced Europe to do, to buy more expensive American gas in order to diversify off of Russia when Putin started to use gas diplomacy to reassert Russia on the world stage. So George Soros and Vladimir Putin were locked in a death battle for control over Naftogaz, because Naftogaz was basically split on its board between the NATO side and the Russia side, because all of Russia's economy was based on these Russian gas transits. And so what NATO worked to do was diversify the gas transit so that they started from the Permian Basin in Houston. They were ported in through the Baltic Sea to run through terminals in Poland to connect to Naftogaz. And so Naftogaz would be, Ukraine would still be getting billions of dollars of gas transit money, but the starting point would be U.S. companies and British companies rather than the Russian government. And you can argue that that's in, the national interests of American citizens or British citizens. But, at the end of the day, it is still a dirty tricks operation, and that flies in the face of 100 years of our, free trade policies, if you will. But George Soros was the battering ram for orchestrating that and for privatizing Naftogaz and prying it off of Russia. And so George Soros funding essentially the Democrat Party and funding the political operatives who are spearheading the Ukraine situation is perfect for his own financial empire, because he's the one who's investing in Naftogaz and whose own portfolio companies and his own investment funds are invested in the endogenous gas industry in Ukraine. So he is basically bribing U.S. and British officials to take the battering ram of their military and CIA to pull off the operation that benefits his own financial portfolio companies. And the last thing I'll say is you can go on my Twitter right now at Mike Ben Cyber, type in the search bar at Mike Ben Cyber, Soros Empire, and you will see a direct quote from George Soros himself, where he is bragging on tape that he created the Soros Empire by, quote, picking up the pieces of the fading Soviet empire to create the Soros Empire out of.
The Soviet Empire collapsed, and as the empire collapsed, I moved in and picked up the pieces, first in Hungary in 1984, and then Poland in 87, China in 87 as well. So this is how the Soros Empire was replacing the Soviet Empire.
So he was, that meme of two photographs and you look at them and you say it's the same picture? When you see NATO and you see Soros, they're the same picture. When you see the U.S. State Department or the UK Foreign Office and you see Soros, it's the same picture. When you see the CIA or British intelligence and then you see a picture of George Soros, it's the same picture. They're one blob.
Bloody hell, Mike. That was amazing. We didn't even get a chance to get to the Hillary Clinton kill list, which I was looking forward to, particularly given that we're probably both on it. It was a great conversation.
Almost spit up my water there.
There may be a little something extra in that water. You keep carrying on the way you are. Hey, thanks for watching. If you want to see more uncensored content where free speech can flourish, join our live stream. Click the link right here to watch the next video if you want to, or become a member of a growing movement. Download the Rumble app and you'll be informed every time we make a new piece of content. Stay free.